and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek UK. I'm PRWeek's Deputy Editor Siobhan Holt, and as it's a new year, we thought it'd be the ideal time to discuss recruitment in comms and PR in 2026. I'm joined by two recruitment professionals. Our guests are Rohan Shah, co-founder of Reuben Sinclair, and Christabel Hosking, a recruitment consultant at Latte. Well, thanks for joining us today. So I'm going to jump in with the big question. What are the trends you're seeing currently in recruitment this year? Rohan, do you want to start?
Well, considering we're only about 11 working days into January, I think it's...
Have you got 10?
I guess I can talk about what I've seen certainly over the last, 6 to 9 months, and what I think might happen over the next year or so. But if we do just take January as a starting comparison to the last 6 to 9 months or so, we've definitely seen an uptick in the number of vacancies that are coming through. I think there are a few reasons for that though. January, you do tend to get an uplift in vacancies because people might come back and they might resign. You've also got companies that maybe didn't act in December because for various reasons that are now acting now in terms of their hiring efforts. And I think also one of the things that we're actually being told by the companies we're speaking to at the moment is that pipeline of new business activity seems to be pretty busy. Now that might be as a delayed result of delayed activity in December or no activity in December because of the budget, but there seems to be certainly some positive vibes around about new business pipeline, and so people are very much keeping their eyes open on resourcing capacity and talent in case they win these briefs.
Yeah, are you seeing that as well, Chris?
Absolutely. I always caveat with the recruiter optimism with the market, but it seems to us that there's been a shift from what was kind of skeletal teams being replaced, one or two people leaving and needing that core team base in 2025. In 2026, it seems that the motivations behind the hires are really positive. It is people who have had significant new business wins at the very end of last year or start of this year, projecting more of that to come, and so needing new staff to expand the team rather than replace the skeletal one, which is very good news for us and them.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's been a lot of mergers going on at some of the big holding companies. Have you seen the impact of that as well? Are people out there looking for new jobs?
I think there are, as a result of restructures or just the integration going on and needing to change a few things around. But to be honest with you, certainly from, for example, like the Omnicom, IPG, from the people that we've spoken to in PR, I think a lot of them felt that they would be impacted a lot more. And actually, it hasn't been that bad. I think actually it's probably more the advertising units that have been probably more largely impacted by changes there. But I think that says a good thing, and I think it just shows that actually PR was a key part of the strategy of the acquisition, particularly in terms of those big networks, rather than sort of a peripheral thing. So look, as integration happens more between some of these acquisitions and the mergers, we may see more change, but largely it hasn't been as bad as I think people thought it would be. And that's what we're hearing from people who have been part of those acquisitions and mergers.
Have you had that experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think the only slight difference from that is at the junior and kind of mid-level, we've definitely seen that. People are sticking out the calm of the storm. There was a lot of turbulence at the end of last year and they're bedded in and wanting to see what happens over the next 3 months. The only difference that we saw is we were recruiting for a number of sort of managing director, very senior positions at the end of last year, and found that there was potentially an increase in senior talent from those agencies that had merged wanting to move. It's sort of seemingly quite a 50-50 split between those who are looking to stay and see it out and those who are moving. And from those who are moving, it seems it's a life shift that's happening at the end of the big networks, and moving to boutique specialist agencies was the motivation behind the move at that very senior level.
No, I think that's a really fair point. I think the acquisitions, the mergers have probably created a bit more of a flatter structure across some of the companies. And so definitely like the number of senior talent on the market has grown, rightly so from some of the companies that were part of the groups, but across the industry as a whole, actually, I think we used to get on average anywhere between 50 to 100 applicants per sort of senior role. Now we're seeing 150 to 300, more towards the higher end for some really, really senior vacancies. So there are a number of senior talent out there that are looking, and actually for prolonged periods of time, more so than what they were in the last 2 or 3 years.
Are there any other trends that you're spotting in this sort of recruitment market? What types of jobs? Is creative an option?
I think creative definitely is an option. I think what we're seeing, though, certainly from, I think, a more digital aspect, a change in social roles. They're more focused on creator partnerships now, influencers, rather than just your typical traditional sort of digital elements. So that's where we're seeing a real change. But yeah, I don't know. Are you seeing anything different?
No, I would definitely echo that. I think the social media roles particularly, and it's always difficult to know whether it's a Latte thing or an industry thing, but we're definitely seeing a number of our clients who traditionally recruit mainly for PR roles, maybe one social role a year, are upping that to more. And the same on the creative front. We've got a couple of positions in that area too, either from people who have got to a senior level but are the ideas person and moving to creative, or those like creative career creatives. There's definitely a bit of momentum in that area.
Have you noticed a slowdown at all on the junior hires? You mentioned there that with the work there seems to be demand for, getting more people in, but I'm wondering as a trend overall.
I said there's been an uptick, and it's a small uptick. And actually, over the last 3 years, the number of roles have been declining. So any green shoots are a good thing. I do think that entry-level roles have been massively impacted. I'm sure we'll talk about AI at some point, but there is a large part of that that's contributed towards this. Obviously, the government figures have shown that graduate intake was at its lowest in a decade, right? So that's not too different to what we're seeing going on in the industry, in the PR industry at the moment. But that being said, we have noticed a slight desire, or a bit more of an increase in the number of SAE roles that we are getting, but they want established people with experience. So getting in from grassroots is really tough for people entering the industry. But if you're established at sort of AE looking to take a step up to SAE, or you're already established SAE, there is still there is a demand there. And I think there's loads of reasons for this. And I could talk all day about what I think is going on in the industry around a redistribution of responsibilities, particularly from the top and at the lower level, right? At the top, like we said, there's more senior people on the market than there has been in a long time or ever been. And companies, in my experience, they're not replacing these roles like for like. When I'm asking that question, why are you hiring for this position? It's because somebody's left, and then that person will typically be more senior than the role that they're actually hiring for. So what's happening there is that because of various factors, budgets, recruitment restraints, the increase in national insurance, companies are trying to hire at a slightly lower level to save on costs. And what's happening with the senior responsibilities that the person previously had is being shared out amongst the rest of the team, right? And what's going on at the junior level is almost the same thing, right? Companies are certainly exploring AI. They're probably not hiring entry level as a result of what they're exploring and what they think can happen, but still some work needs to get done. And that again is being passed over to sort of more mid-level team. So what's kind of happening is I feel that from SAE right the way through to AD level, you've just got a redistribution of responsibilities from the top and from the bottom, where people are going to get overloaded unless something changes down the line. I think we've got about 6 to 9 months to correct that. Otherwise, there's going to be some serious burnout, I think, possibly.
Christabel, is that something that rings true with what you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting to hear like a different, because we, at the junior level at least, have felt that AI, I think about midway through last year, there was a lot of talk about what's going to happen to the account exec. Where's it going to go? How are we going to deal with not having entry-level talent because AI can do so much of it? And from our conversations, we're finding that senior leaders are starting to realise the necessity of those hires, that they can't have middle management without account execs, and that the account execs are crucial to the company continuing in the way that it has done for years. What we're finding now is it's the expectations of those account execs, which I think you were talking to a bit there, that is starting to change. The questions we're getting asked around strategy for account execs and what their AI capabilities are, that's seeming to change. So I think junior talent is definitely still for changing, but I think the importance of it and the hype around it disappearing completely is calming. And I think people are making hires at that level, just with slightly different expectations.
Yeah, I was just going to also ask then about degrees. So obviously, if they're asking for that talent, are you able to go to, look for graduates? Is that a possibility now? I know there's been a decrease in the courses, so I'm interested into where you both look for those candidates, and what are you looking for?
It's really difficult for us to, for maybe you have more understanding, but for a recruiter's perspective, or when clients are using us, it's typically because they want that experienced person with 12 months. The real entry level talent tends to come through direct applications. So we've done like a entry-level guide that helps give advice for that particular niche. In regards to whether people are looking for degrees, though, in our salary guide, there was 97% in the PR industry that had degree qualifications versus 3% that don't, and that was last year. So there's definitely still a industry-wide point that degrees are necessary. One of the clients that we're working with just in a recent brief this year has specified that red brick universities would be part of their ideal candidate.
Wow, okay.
So it definitely does still exist, the reputation around. I think there's quite a lot of hard work being done, but we've not seen the evidence of that in what people are looking for in their hires.
And they're not specifying whether they want a PR degree versus just a general degree.
So actually we find they actively more is talked about not wanting a PR degree than it is a PR degree. This particular client has specified that as well, red brick and not a PR degree. I think a classic, I don't know whether you find the same, but a classic degree which shows high level writing skills, etc., seem to be more favourable than a PR degree in my experience.
I definitely agree with your first point in the sense that I think a lot of people in the industry have degrees. I also agree with your point that, when people typically come to use a recruitment consultancy, it's because they generally are looking for people with experience rather than sort of entry level, which a lot of people advertise for, and they'll get an influx of applications, or they go through an internship program, or they might go through various other methods at grassroots. So talking to a graduate recruiter might give you a better answer on this. But I've definitely, certainly from the clients we deal with, I've seen a decline, quite a big decline over 10 years in terms of companies asking for a degree. I think in the last year, we probably had one or two state on their job spec that they wanted a degree. And then when we go through a briefing call with them, we ask them is that absolutely necessary. And one said yes. Other than that, we're not seeing a massive request for it. I think also, there's been a lot in the industry working towards more diverse applications, and I think the industry has really taken it on board, and I think companies are making a conscious effort to not necessarily go down that route.
The conscious effort is absolutely being made. Yeah. I just think the evidence of it we aren't quite seeing yet. We aren't seeing the amount we'd want to of people who have come from alternative routes and are working at the agencies. It also could be our guide and how it's being reported and stuff. But I think the intention is there from all of our, everybody really wants to diversify the base of staff that they've got. It's just how to actually get that to happen on paper that seems to be the challenge. But I agree that we've got one client who specifies the red brick university, but the majority are if you can find me someone who doesn't, brilliant, we'd really welcome that. We want to have a more diverse staff base for sure.
And is that also happening at the senior level?
For degrees?
No, for diversity. It
was a massive focus previously, but I do think certainly since a certain election took place across the pond, companies, I wouldn't say they're sunsetting it in the way that other companies are, but it has dropped off the radar. It's dropped off the conversation as much. We're not necessarily getting asked as much for, I need a 33% shortlist on X, Y, and Z, right? Don't get me wrong, diversity runs through our recruitment process anyway. We have an inclusive recruitment structure and process internally at our business. But the conversation around shortlists, diversity on shortlists, I definitely don't think is as prevalent.
And is that the same also for looking for female senior leaders, maybe?
I think so. It's not necessarily specifically outlined that this is what they want via a shortlist. Let's also not forget that I think as time's gone on, people have not understood, but they get the importance of the Equality Act, right? And it is the best person for the job fundamentally, right? And setting targets can go against some of what the Equality Act actually says you should be doing, right? So people are also now making sure that they're not stepping over the line on what they can be asking for. There are obviously certain situations where you can set targets, or you can make a preference choice, one over the other, but you've got to be able to evidence that and so forth. So from a perspective of briefs that we're getting on senior positions, it's very much a case of this is what I'm looking for, who is available, and as part of our recruitment process, they trust us to make sure that it's a diverse shortlist, which it is because we run an inclusive recruitment process.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that a similar thing at Latte?
Definitely. I think I completely agree with the fact that it's maybe lessened overtly in the conversation at the moment. It's not something that on briefing calls, we obviously bring it up and it's part of our process, and they trust us in a similar way to manage that for them, but it's not something that we're hearing as point 2 or 3 on a job briefing in a way that it was. In saying that, I think culture generally has probably become more important. I don't know whether that's merger led, but I think, and it feeds into that perhaps somewhat, particularly with the different gender conversations. I think I have had a few conversations recently about we've got a very heavy female team or we've got a very heavy male team, and not being able to specifically say, could we therefore have a male? Because you wouldn't be encouraged to do that. But noting how different diversity structures can impact the culture of a company, and senior leaders being very aware of that is definitely something that I'm still hearing.
I'm going to now bring it on to the topic of salaries, guys, because I know that's what our listeners will want me to ask about. Have you noticed there's been a change in that at all? Increases, decreases? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think you said you brought out a salary guide as well. We've literally just released our salary guide, and we, obviously comparing it to 2025, which we released it at the same time, we've seen 2 changes really. The changes at the bottom end and changes at the very top end. That middle part hasn't really changed at all from the data that we've seen on our side and within our business and the candidates and clients that we deal with. So from the bottom end, companies have obviously realised the importance of paying like the living wage with the cost of living going up. Meeting the minimum requirements is paramount, but the London living wage has certainly taken rolls up, and companies are really adhering to that. They're actually saying, well, no, look, to live in London, work in London, we should pay something that's more weighted higher. So we've definitely seen movement on lower end salaries at sort of AE level. And then at the very top end, unfortunately, the salaries have dropped. And the reason why we've seen salaries drop is because, like I said, over the last 6 to 9 months, senior level there's been more people on the market. They've been on the market for prolonged period of times. Like generally, senior candidates would have expected to find a role within 3 months. We've had candidates 6, 9 months still actively looking for positions. When it gets to that point, people will very much consider taking a drop in salary. And so as a result, the demands on salary from the candidates aren't very high. Companies know that, and they have dropped salaries, and they're securing talent for less at the very senior end.
And why is it that they're not finding their jobs, do you think?
I just don't think there are as many as there used to be, yeah.
So it's cut that top layer.
Absolutely. I think that during periods of uncertainty, leadership is looked at a lot, and it's either replaced, either like for like. Owner-led businesses might have at one point had an MD running the organisation for them. We have seen a number of owners step back into the business to help create stability, to get it back to where they want, certainly over the last year and a half, because businesses started declining in terms of revenues. Business owners started saying, where's my profits? What's going on? They step back in, leadership goes out, and then they start to try and rebuild things from there again. So we've definitely seen people on the market for prolonged periods of time because there just aren't as many positions. And as a result of these acquisitions, mergers, more senior talent has become available on the market. So you've got heightened competition when there is a role available.
Absolutely. Is your salary guide similar?
Yeah, which is brilliant to hear. Like we've seen that. It is, otherwise we could all be singing from a different hymn sheet. No, we have seen the same, like that increase at the junior level to match the expectations of increases in national, etc. The middle has stayed very similar. I've spoken to Dean, who's the founder, who can speak to the 10 years more than I can. And he said the same thing, around COVID time, it'd be up and down every 6 months. There was a real fluctuation in salaries that hasn't been in the last 6 and wouldn't expect it to be over the next 6 either, but that's plateaued at the middle level. It is really interesting, the senior level point, because it's actually like a difference in what we're seeing. With that senior talent who we were reaching out to for the managing director positions, which were new positions, founder-led agencies introducing an MD, the people who we had known who had been on the market for 6 to 9 months, seemed to have found positions. And we did find that recruitment for that role was more, when we received the brief, we thought, gosh, all of those people who have been out there for months will be able to give them a really great opportunity. And they seem to have tied up opportunities here and there. It seemed to be a bit more positive. It could obviously be just they were quite specialist sectors, so it could have been in those areas that they were. But our feeling was maybe that top level consumer talent is starting to find positions after quite a long period of not being able to find them. Again, very specialist sectors that we were recruiting in the consumer world. So maybe that was the reason for that.
I think that's fair. And I do think it might be on an individual client by client basis for sure. I do think your point around sector specialism though is really important. I think really specialist sectors, I think areas like strategic comms, dealing with complex issues, crisis, public affairs, these are all areas where senior talent were still very much required, and they probably secure positions quicker, because these roles rely very much on like human counsel, consultancy. It's not so AI led or content generation led. That's right. I would probably say certainly in the specialized sectors, there's more. But also, I think the ones that are finding positions quicker than others into the senior end are really able to evidence and showcase their new business capabilities, producing genuine, tangible outcomes for an organization, having direct contacts, being able to bring leads to an organization. Those are the ones that are in high demand. On the senior end, because we are seeing people take longer to secure positions, they need to earn some money. And so we've definitely seen a rise of senior candidates offering fractional services. They will say, look, I'm very happy to work with organizations providing senior level counsel, even getting my hands dirty where I need to, and offering that on a fractional basis of 1 or 2 days per week, or however a business might feel comfortable. So definitely, and senior level is not so much freelance, it's definitely what they would class as fractional project gigs. But also, I do think, we haven't talked as much about in-house, right? And I think in-house opportunities, we saw a 60% decline in in-house opportunities last year, right, in comparison to 2024. When we speak to a lot of in-house talent, the reasons why they've either been made redundant, they've been part of a restructure, or they've not got a position anymore, is because companies are cutting budgets. And generally the feedback has been, the company wants to outsource my responsibilities either to a project-based agency, or they want to rely on freelance or fractional talent because they don't want to have the permanent cost base. So I think as this rises, and as senior level candidates continue to look for jobs for a prolonged period of times, they will start to offer fractional roles or freelance opportunities, and I think companies will take it. So yeah.
Yes, there is opportunity out there, but the model's going to change potentially.
Possibly, unless things are corrected in the market in terms of companies hiring like for like when a senior person leaves, companies investing in senior level hires as an investment opportunity to grow a business. But those things have kind of become a bit stagnant. Like, companies aren't investing in growth hires as much as they were previously. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that if it can correct somewhere along the line, then the model should hopefully not change too much. But there's definitely a rise in fractional and freelance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with the pay reductions that are associated with that at the senior level. It's definitely people who are taking cuts on their freelance rate, for sure.
I'm going to now bring up AI and the impact on recruitment. Are you seeing a rise in people using AI to create CVs, and what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think any recruiter across any industry can probably speak to the fact that everything has become more generic, both in cover letters and CVs, and it's driving everybody mad. I think that would be true for everyone. I think we're in a fortunate position where using recruiters means that you can screen beyond that and before it gets to a client. So when candidates are using us, the CV being so heavily AI automated potentially matters less, because we're able to flesh it out with our knowledge, interviews, etc. My key advice to candidates with the use of CVs with AI is, rather than using it to take the bullet points, we've all seen, bullet points starting with spearheading or a really classic AI word. Use it to test what you're writing. Put your CV and all the bullet points in and say, does this show my management skills? Have I correctly identified how I pitch for stories even? And get it to respond to you and use that to inform your CV and to quicken that process rather than asking for peer feedback, etc. But copy and pasting from AI onto a CV is not suitable for PR recruitment, I would suggest.
Yeah, totally agree. And you can tell when it's AI generated. And I think the advice you've just given there is like spot on. It's like perfect advice. I think one of the things that we are seeing, and I think one of the questions is, why are we seeing a rise in people using this, particularly like people in PR and comms? Like, they should be able to write about themselves in free flow. But some of the feedback that we're given when asking the question, like, why would you choose to use it over writing it yourself in its entirety, is because people are genuinely worried about AI screening tools. Like, they're saying, well, actually, and these are some good candidates. They're saying, I've made applications. I feel like I'm being overlooked by what is an AI screening tool, and I'm not getting invited in for interviews. And so people are utilizing AI to try and bypass these AI screening tools by thinking, well, it will use the right words to make me more attractive to AI. And so there's that battle there, and I do feel for people.
Do you think that PR and comms are using AI screening?
I mean, we don't necessarily deal with huge groups because they've got their own internal talent teams. I mean, we do deal with some companies that are part of those groups, but I don't know is the honest answer. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's difficult for us because we don't work with the huge big globals, largely because of our clean creatives pledge. But the smaller agencies, I don't think they would use the AI screening for their CVs. And the ones that we work with, I can't see bringing them in, but I totally understand the candidate anxiety about it. It's everywhere. You need to have these buzzwords, otherwise you're not even going to get past an email. But I do think in PR and comms, from what we see, the mid-sized to small agencies, they are either using recruiters or reviewing CVs.
I think that's exactly right. And I think when they're using a recruiter, they trust us to do the screening,
Exactly.
right? So it takes that big part of that. However, a number of vacancies that have come to recruiters have dropped like that. I'm not going to beat around the bush there. And that's because it's not because companies aren't hiring as much. It's just companies are still hiring, yes, at a reduced rate, but they're choosing to hire themselves, right? They're choosing to advertise the roles themselves. They're getting their managers to, put up an advert, go onto LinkedIn and go through applications. My fear here is the more that happens, there's more candidates on the market. As we're saying, we're seeing large numbers of applications go through. Hiring managers won't be able to deal with these large number of applications themselves because they've got their day job to do. That's when companies will start to say, well, okay, let's just get a screening tool that might help you out, and that will happen. And so the longer this goes on, I do feel smaller companies will invest in those screening tools, particularly because some of them aren't that expensive. They're on a subscription-based model. It's quite cheap.
Yeah.
So candidates are battling that. And I think, they're thinking, well, if I'm getting overlooked by AI screening tools, then I'm going to use AI to try and get around it.
Yeah. Some people then obviously do say that AI, the level it's going to impact the most is the junior level. Do you agree with that? And have you noticed that as a trend?
It's definitely impacted a lower level in the sense that companies, I think, have put a pause almost on entry-level hiring or lower-level hiring because they're exploring with AI. I don't think a lot of companies still know exactly where it's fitting into their organisation. Some, for sure, they probably have it sorted out, the ones that can afford to really invest in it. But I think what's happening here is that it's being taken in its purest, most simplest form, which is, it can generate content, it can do X, Y, and Z. But what AI can't do, right, it can't actually provide stability, it can't set clear directions, it can't look at ethical usage, it can't fact check, etc. Like, it can't build relationships. AI probably should be utilized for these areas, right? Building relationships, fact-checking work, building competitor analysis, understanding if the media monitoring and sentiment is correct. So AEs can work in partnership, I think, with AI, but I feel at the moment companies are exploring it, thinking it can replace the role. I think that's a big fear. And I think that's why, some roles have dropped off at the junior end, but I don't see that being a prolonged thing. I think entry-level positions will increase once companies have got their AI sorted.
Definitely, and I think that's starting to happen. I think one of our key clients has hired their first AI associate, which I think will become, whether they rename the title or not, but will become more commonplace, that these are people who are expected at a junior level to bring some AI skills with them. I think that's where we're having our conversations and our consultations with clients, which is, where is this AI training going to come from for the junior talent? Hiring at grad level, maybe it's introduced in some universities now, but ultimately, maybe that should come from higher up. Also, what we're speaking to clients more and more about doing, which I think they are starting to adopt, is we had, again, in our salary guide, 28% who in 2024 were trained in AI, which then jumped up to 49, I believe, in 2025. And we would expect that to go up to 70-ish in the next year. I think what's going to become really critical to protecting the junior roles is companies investing in training juniors in AI. If they want the role to become more AI focused, they need to invest in those juniors having that skill set so that AE, the account exec, can keep in existence, but add that AI benefit that they are looking for. And I totally agree. I think strategy is going to be crucial for juniors to have in a way that it hasn't been before. Before it can be considered quite an admin-based role. I think that would be fair to say for lots of agencies. I think that will shift over this year. I think there will be an expectation that you're bringing ideas to the table, that you're building relationships, that you're someone who can advise people on AI. The expectations will change. I think it's really exciting for junior people coming into PR. I think to be able to not be doing spreadsheets and admin, and to be able to be contributing ideas and helping develop strategies and dealing with senior leaders and being someone who has those AI skills trained to them is a really exciting job role. It's just how agencies play catch up, like you're saying, with getting those skills to protect the junior hires.
Yeah, totally. 100%. I think AI is there to sort of speed up, it's there to create structure, and it's there to help companies scale. And I think it can really help AEs do what they're doing at pace, which then frees up the time for AEs, even SAEs, to focus on the more human elements of the role. And I think that is exciting. It's exciting for the industry. But one thing I do think is important is AI is not just impacting, junior roles. I think it's impacting all levels. So I don't think we should just say, oh, AI is having giving entry-level people a hard time. I think it's across all levels.
Have you noticed, you obviously were talking about senior leaders there, are they being asked about AI and what they can bring to the table on the tech?
Not as much, no, because I think, it just naturally, from what we're seeing anyway, I think a big part of their role is strategic counsel, providing strategy, operational judgment for the business as a whole. So it's not so much focused on that, although they want people that might be able to put together the right teams to build AI. It's not a core focus on specs that we're seeing. I don't know if that's the same with you.
Yeah, I think the conversations we're having with senior leaders is who do we get in to help us with the AI strategy? I think that's becoming more of a problem for them. And additionally, it does loop a little bit back to the juniors, but it's for the senior leaders positions, is if they receive something from an AE that is going to require, let's say, 3 hours of back and forth and training, it's slightly off course and they need to course correct and do some training, and it's going to take 3 hours of their time. Or they can run it through AI with good prompts that they've learned and that they've developed the skills for, skip that 3 hours of training and use AI to do that. Their team is running more efficiently in time spent. Again, a really core problem and concern, because they need the training in order for them to upskill. So yeah, I think it's changing the senior leader's job role, but I think the expectation on them is very different in terms of what they need to personally upskill.
So what would your advice be then? You obviously got, say, account exec that you're trying to recruit for a client that's meant to have AI knowledge, that can do the soft skills, that can maybe bring strategy. We don't have the same graduate courses or internships as many now, maybe, as we used to. So how are you finding the candidates, and what are you saying to your clients? What are you saying to your candidates on that?
I think the thing that I find across PR, but junior level talent, is the core of it is the drive and the ambition to join the industry and the desire to be there. And I think they have that, which means they have gone on courses about AI. They are educating themselves. They are asking leaders at university or school, how do I upskill in this? It's going to be really important because I want to work in comms. Nobody's expecting an account exec to come in with an in-depth knowledge of how to use AI in PR and comms. It's just interest. I've looked up this course. I have tested this myself on AI with the comms that I'm writing. I have asked peers, interest in, I know AI is going to be key to be in this industry for 15 years. And this is what I've done to try to get some entry level points and learnings around what I can do. And then it's on to the company's responsibility to develop that when they get there. And I think that's what people are looking for, in my experience, in conversations with juniors. It comes all the way back to drive and ambition for the industry, and AI just being another part of that. Have you shown that you have gone above and beyond to get access to comms wherever you can? And part of that is now, have you tried to upskill your AI skills?
And is that what you're saying to the clients that are hiring, that look for the curious people?
Exactly. That's exactly the right word. Look for the curiosity for AI. Look for someone who has gone out and wants to get the skills, because then when you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And then you've got somebody in 2 years' time who can run a team of AI associates as the industry continues to develop. So I think that's the reassuring bit, is the curiosity, the drive, the ambition is still all of the words that are coming up in an abundance at junior level talent.
Is that your experience as well?
Very eloquently put. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, 100%. There's a certain point, and I don't think we're that far off it, where AI will just be part of the process and how organisations work. And so AEs will just come in and facilitate a function utilising inbuilt AI processes, and it will just simply speed up what is happening today or in the last 5 years. It's just going to speed it up, which then, like I said before, it just gives them more time to focus on other areas of the job, which then are more geared around human element, right? And that is geared around building the relationships, building new processes if there is an opportunity to, making sure that the client is where they need to be with their campaigns, on budgets, whatever it might be. So I do think that, yeah, I think that companies want that curiosity in AI, but I think they are very much also aware that it is going to just be a part of how they work. And actually, they also want them to have these other softer skills that will help them when dealing with clients or journalists and whatever else.
Brilliant. So I'm going to now ask you what staff are looking for. What do they want to get out of their workplace and career? And is there a difference maybe between the age groups and what they are looking for in their benefits or what they want, whether that be work-life balance?
There's a few differences between, if we talk younger generation and older rather than Gen Z, because I think they can merge into one a bit. But I think what we see work-life balance wise, the more junior portion of the team want to be in office. The more senior want the flexibility to drop kids off at school, move out of London and come in 1 day a week. So that's the kind of push and pull on that front. I think the other argument that comes into play that we find is that millennials plus have a kind of attitude of who's in the office the latest, who is working the hardest physically, who can I see putting in the hours, who is the first one on the phone in the morning, how does their work ethic come across to me? I need to see it. And the younger generation are more outcome focused. They are, I've done the work, I've done it to a high standard, I've looked at what success looks like, you've told me, I've executed on that. That's me doing my job. And I think as the millennials become the agency leaders, that clash is quite difficult. And I think the work from home setup speaks to that too. Why do I have to come in the office for the extra 2 days a week if I'm doing my job really well? From an older perspective, because you need to show up and you need to be, seen to be working very hard. And from the younger perspective, they struggle with that a bit. So that's the clash that I think between the generations is the only one that we see. And actually married right, I think the two work really well together. But I think that's a core difference with the older and younger generation, as it were.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think all generations have their own desires and wants, and I think with responsibility, comes different requirements, and that might be caring responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and when you don't have some of those responsibilities, you probably are thinking about other things, like you can be in the office more because you don't have caring responsibilities. But what we're seeing here though is that when people at a lower level want to be in the office, they also want to learn like that. And they know that it's not just technology that teaches them, it's people. And so if you've got more senior people who are at a different stage in life wanting to be out of the office or work from home because it serves a purpose in their personal life, you've then got a real management issue, haven't you? And I think that's where there is a real struggle for businesses.
And does it make it harder to recruit then? Are you finding maybe you might have an agency that wants someone in 5 days a week, but you can't find a senior person that's happy with that?
Yeah, I think it's that everyone's got to do what serves their business best. But I think, like you were just saying, I think we found just under 70% want to be in 2 to 3 days a week. So actually either side of that is where businesses find securing talent a struggle. So if you're in 1 day a week, it's just as difficult as if you're in 4 days a week, because the junior people, like you're saying, they want to learn. They also want to make friends. They might have moved to London from a different city and be starting their life here. They want to be in and they want that culture, but they don't want to be in 5 days a week. And senior people might be okay with 1 day a week, but they're absolutely not going to be okay with 5 days a week. So the battle has ended on if you're in 2 to 3 days. If you're still in 1, 4, 5, you do come into some difficulty. Ultimately, you've got to do what's best. And I think that's where the core hours and different approaches can be quite useful. Lots of agencies are seeing kind of the 2 weeks work from anywhere, or the core hour structure of sort of 10:30 to 4:30 for school drop-offs and allowing for people to commute into London, etc. So I think you can work with it if you've got 1, 4 or 5, but 2 to 3 is where you're going to have an ease in securing the top level talent in what they're expecting.
And have you noticed a rise in returning to more a 4 or 5 weekday, or do you think it's still at the hybrid?
Yeah, I think it is. I think what we've seen is the return to the 2-3. I think some agencies were operating at kind of 1-2 because the senior leaders are the ones that want to be able to have the flex to be at home, and actually have realised they can't get the account manager and below talent if they stick at 1 day a week in the office. So they're starting to increase it a bit more. In saying that, there are so many anomalies to these assumptions. And one of the clients we've got who are 1 day a week have fab talent and they're brilliant and they recruit the right people, and they've introduced lots of social incentives around that in order to navigate it. So the battle might be coming to an end, but the conversation is definitely not. And I think agencies are finding ways to navigate being on the periphery of the 2 to 3 days in a brilliant way.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, very rarely do I see 5 days. I mean, I have seen it and we just won't even bother working on that week. It's just no point. 4 days and 1 day, I think is interesting. We're 1 day in the office, and actually when we've tried to recruit for ourselves, we found it a struggle. And it's not so much that people won't entertain the company and what we're doing or consider a job interview with us. It's actually when they've got other opportunities, their preferred opportunities that are in the office slightly more than us. And that's purely been a winning factor. So that is definitely the case. I think it's not that people will discount you because you're only in the office 1 day a week. I think that if they have other opportunities where it's 2 or 3 days a week, they might then prefer that over your opportunity. I'd say that's the same with 4 days a week.
Absolutely. You've got to give something to account for it on the 1 day a week, whereas the 2-3 you don't at all.
So then what job title then do you think is going to be extinct in the PR industry in the next 5 years?
Apart from Keir Starmer's head of comms, I don't think there will be many that will be extinct. I think if anything, job titles will be added. Yeah.
I totally agree. That's exactly what we were saying.
And what do you think they will be? Is there any...
I mean, well, look, I think you talked about an AI associate, right? And that's a perfect example. And, you will probably get, there's prompt engineering roles now, but I think you might get more roles geared around prompting. You might get roles geared more around data analysis, like looking at the data that's being spat out by AI and putting some human judgment onto it, fact checking those things. So all of these it does create work, right? So I think companies will look at maybe coming up with some weird and wonderful titles that, the storytelling is that, the whole thing about storytelling where Sarah Waddington was on the radio 4. Exactly. Yeah. So the storytelling's the title now, right? And I think some wonderful names will come out of new job titles being created.
Do you think the title of head of AI will drop eventually because it will be integrated so much into the agency world and in-house world?
Yeah, I can't see, as we've been speaking to, I think it will become so ingrained that, yes, there'll be weird and wonderful titles. Is exactly what we were thinking as well. We're like another heap load more, but maybe none taken away. But I think equally likely is that it's integrated so much it becomes part of a job spec and a CV and a title rather than its own lane of kind of head of AI account manager, AI associate, that actually it's likely to merge in part from that kind of deep tech element of AI, of prompt users, etc., that to start generative AI and that whole world, they may need to get specialists in, but otherwise I think it will probably seep back in.
Yeah, totally. I think where they do want something highly specialised, that's where the titles will come into play. Otherwise, AI is just so wide and so general that it's like, well, what am I actually going to be doing?
Okay, well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks so much to Rohan and Christabel for coming on PR Week's podcast. And thanks for listening. Bye for now.